Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Five Star Zone. I'm your host, Rico Beard. Big weekend for the Big Ten and hoops, where there was a little bit of separation weekend. I'm not going to say separation Saturday, but separation weekend. Michigan had a great week, 2 top 10 victories, one over Nebraska at home, even bigger one on the road at Michigan State at the Breslin Center. Nebraska, on the other end, they had a bad weekend, losing at Michigan and then losing at home to Illinois. And Illinois keeps rolling. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to them or not. We'll get into those standards a little bit later. First, I want to talk about the breakdown of the games, if I could. And look, we've already broke down that Michigan-Nebraska game. But Michigan goes into the Breslin Center, and look, great win for Michigan. Great win, huge win for Michigan. For Dusty May, gets his first victory over Tom Izzo at East Lansing, where Michigan hasn't won, I believe, in like 8 years or so. It's been a while since they won a game there. And it was a very hostile crowd. Dusty May found out the hard way as he thought he was going to sneak in, and he didn't think the student section was in just yet because of all the snow and the coldness. He saw the line of students outside, so he came in there and then pretty much got serenaded by a whole bunch of chants of F you, Dusty, F you, Dusty. So he found out, and they kept going. And I give him credit. He didn't walk away. He just sat there, and he endured it. He took it, and his team took it to the Spartans. And for Michigan, they have been playing some sloppy ball as of late, especially Elliot Cadeau. But not in this game. Elliot came out there and 17 points, 6 assists. But I think the biggest thing he had was 2 turnovers. He had 7 a few days before against Nebraska at home. And he was 3 for 5 from the three-point line, including a lot of back-breaking threes that he made with the shot clock winding down, and he heaved up shots, and he made it. Big-time players make big-time plays, and Elliott made some big-time plays in this game. But not to get overlooked, look, Michigan came out there, and they had an 18-point lead. At the halftime score was in the first half, State couldn't throw a penny in the ocean, and Michigan was hitting everything. Halftime score was 42-26. And they were led by Yaxel Lindenborg, and he finished with 26 points, 12 rebounds, and he was just a man amongst men. And even after the game, he was like, hey, that was the best environment he's ever played in. And he rose to the challenge. He rose to the occasion. He rose to a guy who was looking – he wants to be one of the people that you're looking at for Big Ten Player of the Year. Michigan, as I said, had an 18-point lead. They pretty much dominated Michigan State. Now, the game got a little hairy for Michigan because they didn't maintain their focus and come right out of the half. Michigan State was able to bring the game a whole lot closer. As a matter of fact, in the second half, Michigan, as I said, once had an 18-point lead. It got dwindled to about 5-6. And then before you know it, MSU was sitting there with a 2-point lead late in the second half. Now, they did not hold on to that lead. Michigan came back. They wore down the Spartans, and they got the win. They got a huge win for Michigan, setting themselves up, keeping them in contention for a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, keeping them in contention for the Midwest number 1 seed, meaning they will play games in Buffalo and then turn around and play games in Chicago. If you're in Michigan, you kept the pace. You kept it going. You answered the bell in 2 games. I thought they would split this week, and they didn't. They swept this week, going up against number 5 Nebraska and then number 7 Michigan State. Kudos to Dusty May. He said in the post-game press conference that he learned from last year that his team kind of tuckered out in the Big Ten, and he recruited a team that would be a little bit better. Also, not to be lost, Trey McKinney coming off the bench, 10 points, huge in this game, including 2 of his 3-pointers that he hit also with time running down. Big-time points that they made in this game. Michigan did not flinch. They were ready for the raucous environment of the Breslin Center, and they looked the part. They win the game 83-71 and sit atop of the Big Ten tied with Illinois, since I'm here, Illinois defeats Nebraska. It's a rough week for Nebraska. going 0-2 in the Big Ten. But all is not lost for the Cornhuskers. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But Illinois, props to them. They may be playing some of the best basketball from a team not named Michigan in this conference, but nobody's paying attention to Illinois. They have literally flown under the radar. They go into Lincoln, Nebraska. They go and they beat the Cornhuskers in a place where, look, nobody's beating them there, and they did handily. The game was kind of close. It was like a 1-point game. I believe it was 53-52, followed by a 10-0 spurt, and it was 63-52. Illinois never looked back. They win the game 78-69, handing, as I said, Nebraska their second consecutive loss. But Illinois sits at the top of the Big Ten, tied with Michigan. Let's go back to that Michigan State game. Let me give it some perspective from the Michigan State side. For the Spartans, they just came out there. They were way too tight. I don't know. You would have thought Michigan would have been the team coming out tight, coming into the hostile territory. Michigan State at home, but the crowd there, Dan Campbell, Lions coach in the crowd, Kirk Gibson. No. The Michigan State players were wrapped too tight, and they were just, you could tell they were pressing early in the game. Michigan was making buckets. State was making bricks, and it was brick after brick after brick. At one point I was looking up, Michigan was shooting at like a 45% free throw. 45% percentage from the field. Michigan State was around 18%. They had good looks. They had good shots. Their shots were not falling. Their shots were woeful. And a lot of the people that you thought would step up and get the job done didn't. And that was problematic. Carson Cooper probably played one of his worst games as a Spartan. 6 points, but it wasn't the 6 points. It was the 2 rebounds. And man, that was problematic because even though the rebound battle was even, you thought maybe State would have the advantage, but when Carson Cooper gives you 2 rebounds, and let's just face it, he looked lost. He had a bad foul early in the second half as MSU was coming back in the game. He just wasn't there. Jackson Kohler. Jackson has, I don't know what it is. Now he made a couple threes, but he was 2 for 7, guys, and he was shot putting his shot. It wasn't natural fluid catch and release. He was shot putting his shots, and they were hitting the front of the rim. Look, if you listen to the show, we always play the Charles Ramsey drop. Something's wrong here. Something's wrong here. I don't know what's going on with Jackson Kohler. Remember, in the previous episode, I said between him and Yaxel Lindeborg, they were both in slumps. Yaxel broke out of his slump in a big-time way. Jackson is still in his slump. Now, maybe going on the road to Minnesota will get him out of his slump, but if Michigan State's going to make any type of move and really try to get one of the top 4 spots in the Big Ten, they're going to need Jackson Kohler, and they're going to need Carson Cooper to step up and never have a game like this again. Once again, Jackson finished the game with, was he? He was 12 points. He had 12 points in the game. But if you watch the game, he was 12 points, 5 rebounds, but it was kind of a garbage 12 points. It was points at the end of the game when the game was out of reach. He never could get that big-time basket when State was climbing back in or when State took the lead. That was problematic. Now, a couple good things from this game that I will say. Well, while at the bad things, let's stick with the bad things. Between Divine Ukachuwu, Kurtang, and Trey Fort, we all made as many points as they did. Nothing from those 3. 0 points. Once again, Michigan is one of the top teams in the nation. You're at home, and you have your 3 guys who are the 2 guards, and they give you nothing. 0 points. Think about that. Jesse McCullough scored more points combined than those 3. If you combine all their points, he scored 2 points. Jesse actually came out there and gave some great minutes, especially against Mara. He held his own. He frustrated Mara. And I think that Jesse may have actually worked himself in getting more time. I'm going to get to somebody else who got that a little bit later, but you can't have your three guys like that with 0 points. Carson Cooper, 6 points, 2 rebounds, and Jackson Kohler still out there struggling, 2 for 7 from the three-point line. Look, Michigan was the better team. They had the game won. Now, just because they were the better team didn't mean that Michigan State couldn't win it, because we saw what Rutgers almost did against Michigan State. They just couldn't hit the shot. Now, they had a lead, a 1 point lead, and I think at that point, Jordan Scott took a three from the corner and hit everything but fell into the basket. Had they got to a 4 point lead, I think it would have been a different game. But after that, Michigan, I think, went on like about a 5-0 run, 5-0 or 6-0 run, took that lead right back. And it was pretty much ball game after that. So now, a couple of the positives from the game. Jeremy Fears, career high 31 points. 31 points, 7 assists. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for Jeremy Fears and the way he's attacking the basket, this is he has really flipped the switch lately, and he has become the leader of this team. It kind of reminds me of Jace Richardson last year, where all of a sudden the light clicked on for Jace, and Jace led this team to the Elite Eight. Jeremy Fears is going to take this team as far as he could go. But kind of like a few years ago when Tyson Walker was the point guard, two guard for State, if Tyson scored 29 or more points, MSU didn't win, because that means a lot of other people were just sitting there watching the Tyson Walker show. I hope it's not the same, but it looks like it is. Jeremy Fears goes out there, gives you 31 points, and it was a Jeremy Fears show as far as Michigan State went. But nobody else really stepped up except for Jordan Scott. Jordan Scott came off the bench in the second half and started. Izzo referred to that in the post-game press conference. And I do think that you're probably looking at Jordan Scott going to take over the two-guard spot, because he brought energy, he brought shot making, 10 points, 6 rebounds. And you got to think to yourself, man, maybe if he started earlier, maybe things would have been a little bit different for the Spartans. But you can't fall down 18 points to the University of Michigan. You can't make 4 3-pointers. You can't go 4 for 23 against the University of Michigan, one of the best teams in college hoops, and expect to win the game. Now, MSU is going to have to bounce back. We'll see what happens. But as of now, look, with the standings, the way things are going in the Big Ten, as I stated before, Michigan and Nebraska sitting there atop the Big Ten. Both guys. Let me get the exact standings. 1 second, please. Yeah, Michigan, 1 loss in conference. Illinois, 1 loss in conference. Nebraska, 2 losses in conference. Michigan State, 2 losses in conference. And then Wisconsin sitting there with 3 losses in conference. Here's the deal. As bad as a week it was for Nebraska, Cornhusker fans, if you're watching, I'm going to pick you to win the Big Ten. I'm going to pick you to be the outright champion of the Big Ten. Why? Very simple. When you look at the remaining schedule and you look at the round robin that is these teams, you get the best schedule altogether, because where everybody else is playing each other between Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, because Purdue bounced back from their 3-game loss. They killed Maryland. I don't need to get into that. Maryland is a horrible team, 15 new starters. But between Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois, and Nebraska, heck, you could even throw Wisconsin in there as well. All of those teams are going to be playing each other except for Nebraska. Nebraska has, let me just double check, but Nebraska has one game left between the Big 5 in the Big Ten. 1. That's it. Nebraska plays Purdue, and it's at home. Other than that, they're playing the bottom and the middle of the Big Ten. Everybody else still has to knock each other out. Nebraska played all of the tough games early. And yeah, they had a horrible week. And they will sit back and they will play Purdue later on in this year at home, and then they will also get fat and sassy off of some of the worst teams in the Big Ten. So watch out for Nebraska. As far as Illinois has 3 tough games left. They're on the road at Michigan State next Saturday night, and then they're home against Wisconsin, and then they're home against Michigan. Michigan has tough games. They have to go to Illinois. They have to go to Purdue, and then they get Michigan State at home to end the season. Michigan State has 4. They get Illinois. They still have to go to Wisconsin. They still have to go to Purdue, and then they still have to finish the year off at the University of Michigan. But like I said, Wisconsin has to play at Illinois. Wisconsin has to play at Purdue. So they still have a couple of tough games as well. They got 2 tough games on their schedule. But like I said, when you look at it, it's just kind of Nebraska, the way things fell for them, the way the schedule fell for them, they're sitting pretty well. Purdue, in case you're wondering, has to go to, they got Michigan at home on the 17th. Then they get Indiana. They're going to try to get that game back. Then they're Michigan State. And then they finish the year off at Wisconsin. So Purdue has 4 more tough games as well. So looking at just kind of handicapping this thing, that's why I said I believe that you're probably looking at Nebraska to finish this thing out with the 1 seed. Now, of the 6 teams, it's going to be a battle because here's the thing. A lot can happen within the next, month and a half before the season ends. But you want to be one of the top 4 teams. Why? You get the double bye in the Big Ten tournament, which will be held in Chicago. You want the double bye because that means you don't have to play the extra game on Thursday. 2 of these teams are going to have to play Thursday. You don't want to be one of those teams. You want the double bye. And as of now, like I said, if I were to handicap it as of now, I would probably say the 4 teams, looking at Nebraska, looking at Illinois, looking at Michigan, looking at Michigan State for those 4 teams. That's what you want because you don't want to play the extra games in this Big Ten tournament because a lot's going to come down to who has to play who in seeding. As I say, guys, styles make the fight. But, yeah, this was a little bit of a separation weekend. Illinois showed that they are for real. They are legit, and we should be paying more attention to them. I look for them to rise up in the rankings on Monday. Nebraska's going to fall in the rankings. They're going to fall from 5. They lost 2 in a row. They'll probably end up at about the 11-12 spot, but I would not count Nebraska out. Michigan State is going to fall to probably from the 7 to the 10 spot. I wouldn't count the Spartans out as well, but as I stated before, a lot of improvement needs to be done with that Spartan team. You're going to need a lot of people out who's not named Fears to step up and do their job. And I look for Michigan. Michigan's going to hold pat because, well, the guys ahead of them didn't lose. So, but Michigan is holding on to that 1 seed in the Midwest in Chicago, which is what they're coveting. Because let's face it, you get the 1 seed. Now you're playing 4 hours away in Buffalo the weekend before. And then you'll play the Sweet 16 Elite 8 in Chicago where you can pack the gym with as many home fans as you can get. So that's what they're looking to do. But yeah, as of now, if I'm Nebraska fans, I wouldn't be that angry. I wouldn't count yourself out because, hey, I think that this thing is going to end up being in favor of them because they've knocked out their toughest schedules already. 1 tough game at Purdue. And like I said, if you're Nebraska, and that's going to be early too. As a matter of fact, that's why before I close, Purdue is going to be February 10th. After that, Northwestern at home, at Iowa, Penn State, Maryland, at USC, at UCLA. And then they finish up with Iowa. All winnable games. All enough that they could sit there and they could win this conference with maybe 2 losses. I still say 3 losses is going to win you the Big Ten. The way they're playing, especially with everybody in February about to play these round-robin tournaments, Nebraska can lose one more time, and I think they would still win the Big Ten. So That's it. I'm going to wrap it up right here. Hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you spread the word. Tell your friends. We'll be back midweek to kind of break down and preview next weekend's games and talk about the midweek games in the Big Ten, or if any big-time breaking news happens in football. We already went over the schedule. We'll go over that type of stuff as well. But thanks for watching the 5 Star Zone. I'm your host, Rico Beard.